honor, the giving of honor by one group to another, how does that increase the mutual loyalty between groups that are still competing with one another? All of these questions, I think we have to answer them in order to be able to talk about politics. And I think the first reason why one should approach politics as a conservative rather than as an individualist is because it gives us these theoretical tools to be able to talk about reality, which we don't have as long as we keep within the individualist framework.
As you're talking political perspective, volunteering when we want to join and we can leave when we want to leave, and that's a description of an ideal, what I've just said. I recognize it. That's a description of an ideal, what I've just said. I recognize that that's not the reality. I recognize that that's not the reality in which history, recognizing that that the individual exists in a sense philosophically is a massive achievement, right? Human beings, however they evolved, clearly started out in what promotes this ability to flourish as an individual. Again, an achievement, the idea of individual flourishing. And then we can think about how to create a political system, individual flourishing. And then we can think about how to create a political system around that, a political system that recognizes and allows for the formation of groups, but just under the principle of voluntary. So you can't be forced to join a group. You can't be coerced into forming a group to join a group. You can't be coerced into forming a group other than the fact that you're born in a particular place, in a particular, that in a sense. But that's not force. There's a difference between metaphysics and between choices.
So this is something that came up in the debate that Yoram said that not all human relations are voluntary, and you kind of emphasized that a lot of where we are is not voluntary. We're grounded, we're connected in so much. How can a human be free in the way you're describing, individual be free if some part of who we are is not voluntary, some part of who we are is other?
Well, because what do we mean by freedom? Freedom doesn't mean the negation of the laws of physics, right? Freedom negation of the laws of physics, right? Freedom doesn't mean ignoring. Freedom means the ability within the scope of what's available. Anglo-conservative humanity, that shall not murder, but because they have an understanding of why murdering is bad and wrong and what's bad for them and bad for the kind of world that they want to live in. And I think that's what we achieve through enlightenment, through education, and where we don't treat people just as a blob, tribe that just follows orders. But we now treat individuals as capable of thinking for themselves, capable of discovering truth, capable of figuring out their own values. And that's the big break between, and this is why, this is the break I think that the Declaration represents. The break between society that is based on tradition, following commandments, following rules, because they are the rules, because they are the commandments, and a society where individuals understand those rules, yes, it's now become a tradition, let's say, to respect individual rights, to respect property rights. But they're not following it because it's a tradition. They're following it because they understand what it is that makes it good. So that's the world I think that we were on the process of evolving towards. And that is what got destroyed in the 20th century and is certainly disappeared today. And I think that's a great tragedy, is that we were evolving to a place where people understood the values. I mean, we'll agree, right? It's okay to kill the Jew, right? Or it's okay to steal people.
To communities, however you define that. So romantic partnership.
When I write,
you start getting more Tinder, online dating, the stickiness dissolves, just like in chemistry. You start to have a gas versus a liquid, right? That's the word. So you have to study what actually happens. If you emphasize that the stickiness, the bonds of humans is holding you back, the exercise of voluntary choice is the highest ideal. The danger of that is for that to be implemented or interpreted in displaced by us flawed humans that are not. I mean, you could say we're perfectly reasonable and rational. We could think that all of our decisions, but really, I mean, especially when you're young, you get horny, you make decisions that are suboptimal, perhaps. So the point is, you have to look at reality of when you emphasize different things. So when you talk about what is the ideal life, what is the ideal relations, you have to also think like, what are you emphasizing? I think you both agree on what's important, that community can be important, that freedom is important, but what are you emphasizing? And you're really emphasizing the individual, and you're emphasizing, you're emphasizing more of the community, of the family, of the stickiness of the nation.
Well, look, I don't want to deny the place of the individual. I think that that there really is a very great change in civilization when the books of Moses announce that the individual is created in the image of God. That's a step that's, as far as we know, without precedent before that in history. And to a very large degree, I mean, one of the kind of unspoken things going on is that Yaron and I really do agree on all sorts of things. I think in part because we're both Jewish, and
You did say Euron is basically Moses.
no, I said he was channeling, but that's still
Pretty impressive.
No, that's a compliment.
That's interest and long-term interest. So I think that's universal. I don't know of anybody who's really disagreeing about that. The things in the future of this particular hierarchy, and I completely agree with Yaron that some of these hierarchies are pernicious and oppressive and terrible, and some of them are better. What we might disagree about is that you can find of all, which maybe some people can do it. Maybe some people can do it, but almost no one can do it. I think that's a spiritual truth. But almost no one can do it. I think that's a spiritual truth. And so
I think called religion of primitive philosophy. It was the original philosophy that provided people with some guidance about what to do and what not to do. And secular folks to do the same. And the problem is that I think my morality centered on the individual, what the individual should do with his life in order to attain my morality centered on the individual, what the individual should do with his life in order to attain a good life. I believe that leads to happiness, but the good life, that's why it's good, right? The goal is survival and thriving and flourishing and happiness ultimately. But politics is a servant of that in the end. It's not an end in itself. So the real issue is, you asked before, what is the value relationship? There's enormous value in relationship because we get values from other people. We don't produce all our values. We don't produce all our spiritual values. And we don't produce all our material values. Other people on a massive benefit to us because they produce values we can't. There's a massive division of labor in terms of values, not just in economics, but also in philosophy and elsewhere. It's why we have teachers. It's why we have moral teachers. Moral teachers are important to help guide us towards a good life. Not all of us are philosophers. But what I do demand, if you will, of individuals, this is where I put a burden on you, right? Understand what you're doing, right? Don't embrace a moral teaching because it was tradition. Don't embrace a moral teaching because your parents embraced it. Don't embrace a moral teaching just because your teachers are teaching it. Challenge it. Think about it. Embrace it because you embrace it. You might be wrong. You might embrace the wrong one, but take moral responsibility. Evaluating, testing, challenging, the tend towards the but that's universal, right? I look at places like South Korea, Japan, Asia, cultures that are very, very different in many respects than the West. And yet when they had constitution, not because they chose it because you put it in it, but they to some extent adopted that. And they're successful places today. Those societies in Asia that didn't adopt these values are not successful societies today.
Japan has a birth rate of, what is it, 1.1, 1.2 children per woman. I mean, look, there are some things, there are some places where you give people freedom. This is also biblical, right? The idea that everyone did what's right in his own eyes. Okay, right? This is a refrain in the book of Judges. And vibrate, a to be able to propagate themselves and their values and the way they see things, then I look, you're finished. You can't say that.
So if I implied that Japan is an ideal society, I take that back. But
No,
let's think about Japan for a minute.
I just think we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
Yeah. Give me a second. Hold your thought.
Being dictatorial.
No, I'm sorry.
It's his show, man. We enter into his hierarchy. That's it.
We should talk about hierarchy. But
just to clarify, how do you explain the situation in Japan? Is it the decrease in value in family, like some of us? Just expand on that. Like, how do you explain that situation? You're saying that society is in trouble in a certain way. You kind of describe the nature of that trouble.
I'm saying that when the individual is part of a social group, this can be a family, when the individual stop being able to look at the framework of a particular stop being able to look at the framework of a particular society and identify with it, you lose that you cease to with it, you lose that you cease to understand what it is that we need to do. Not every single person, but I'm talking about society we need to do. Not every single person, but I'm talking about society wide. So there are few individuals who are just going to have a fantastic time and live